to introduce into a single machine, right?
Well, they actually,
Active program meaning
no,
they had a piece.
they had already built a covert enrichment facility, which was only
they hadn't. It was
disclosed.
Natanz was empty till the end of 2006, right? They didn't even start spinning centrifuges in there until
they had gotten centrifuges for AQ Khan. They'd built a deeply buried underground facility at Natanz. They were putting in place the component parts for a nuclear weapons capability. And Ahmad showed conclusively, unless you believe Mossad fabricated it all, that they actually had the plan to build nuclear warheads.
Again, Seymour Hersh says that it was when...
Seymour Hersh is not a nuclear weapons expert. David Albright has. He saw the archive.
Hersh's sources said
you're claiming
that when America invaded Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein for them, that was when they gave up even considering the need for it. Remember, the Iranians held a 1 million-man vigil for the Americans on September 11th. The Iranians hated the Taliban. In fact, the Americans thought Iran might invade Afghanistan earlier in 2001, and they hated Saddam Hussein. Yeah. So they had every reason in the world to want to work with the United States.
No, that's a distraction.
After September 11th.
And the American... It's a distraction, my question is here. Let's not go to Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and 9/11, and the Iranians, and 1 million people vigil. Let's just stay on the topic.
You're asking me what I already answered.
Do you believe Mossad fabricated that entire
I already
archive?
Told you I don't take their word for anything, and as far as I understand, the accusations in there are the same ones from the laptop that are already discredited, and I haven't read David Albright's book. You're distracting from me refuting this giant list of false claims that you made previously that I haven't got a chance.
Let's all agree. You're going to read the book? Maybe Lex, you're going to read the book. Viewers, you should read the book. I think David Albright has done a meticulous job. By the way, just warning, it's a big book, very detailed, hundreds of pages, and he goes through it in meticulous detail in analyzing this archive and showed again that Iran had an active nuclear weapons program designed to build 5 atomic warheads. Now we can talk about what happened after 2003. And did they make the decision to totally stop it?
Yeah, God changed his mind after the neoconservatives lied America into war with Iraq for Ariel Sharon.
So just to clarify, you, Mark, and David Albright believe that Iran was developing a nuclear weapon, and you, Scott, are saying they were not before 2003. That's just to summarize what we were just talking about.
Well, I can tell you that. So Gareth's book came out in 2014. Which is before this archive was supposedly revealed in Tehran. But in Gareth's book, he shows that the CIA and National Intelligence estimate of 2007 that said that there was a program before 2003 and was halted after America invaded Iraq was based on, one, the DIA's mistaken but sincere interpretation of these invoices for these dual-use technologies, and then the smoking laptop, which was completely fake and funneled into the stream by the Mujahideen e-cult, communist terrorist cult, the same people who've come off with, 10 major hoaxes. The NCRI, they just put out, the NCRI, the National Council for Resistance in Iran, that's the MEK. They just put out a fake story, 3-4 weeks ago, about a big secret nuclear weapons site in Iran. Don't you remember? And then nothing happened with that because it was another lie by the MEK. It happens all the time.
So, Lex, maybe we should talk about what happened after 2003. What about this 2007 NIE? What does it mean? Did it mean Iran had now abandoned its nuclear weapons program? Or did something else
happen? They never
had
a nuclear weapons program. All right.
But let's talk about that. They had interesting
according to the
history.
NIE, they had a nuclear weapons research program that never made anything at all. So you can try to conflate that if you want, I think everybody can see what
the 2007 NIE says. What the 2007 NIE says is that, and you are correct, according to the 2007 NIE, is Iran made the decision after the invasion of Iraq not to pursue an active nuclear weapons program anymore.
Because we were putting their best friends in power in Tehran, in Baghdad for them.
Well, because the United States
had
gone
didn't need
in
to worry no more.
And in a matter of 100 days had taken down the Iraqi army.
And put in Abdulaziz al-Hakim's faction, the Supreme Council for Islamic Revolution in Iraq, who've been living in Iran for 20 years.
That's why you and I did not publicly support the Iraq war, did we?
I publicly opposed it.
Good for you.
As far as I possibly could.
And I should have publicly opposed it rather than just working on Iran in 2003. But you're right. It redounded to the benefit of Iran, that invasion. But that's not actually what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is 100 days the Iranians see that the U.S. military has taken down the Iraqi army that they had fought an 8-year war with, where almost 1 million people, Scott, as you know, had been killed. So they were afraid that the United States was going to march from Baghdad to Tehran. So they make a decision to end their active Ahmad program. They make a decision to build up the key capabilities they need to retain an Iranian nuclear weapons option, specifically the enrichment capabilities at Natanz and then Fordow, and at Iraq, giving them the plutonium route. And then what they do is they take the members of the Ahmad program, the nuclear weapons scientists that have worked on this, and they disperse them. So they're now no longer in a formal weapons program. They're put in a number of different research centers and universities. And Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, who you mentioned earlier, who's in some respects, I wouldn't call him the Oppenheimer of the Iranian nuclear weapons program. He's more like, who was in the Oppenheimer movie? Leslie Grove, the guy who was actually responsible for the organization and the training and the recruitment, and the guy that actually ran the program, as opposed to Oppenheimer, the sort of brilliant nuclear physicist. This is Fakhrizadeh. So Fakhrizadeh takes control of this program, and now it is dispersed, and it is unstructured in that sense, because they recognize that if they continue with this, the United States may march to Tehran. And so the NIE says Iran is retaining the key capabilities, the enrichment capabilities, to give them an option for a nuclear weapon. But we, the NIE, have decided, or we have concluded, that they no longer have an active, structured nuclear weapons program. However, since then, what have we seen? We've seen them actually do what many suspected they would do, which is build all the key capabilities that they need so that at time of their choosing, they can decide to develop a nuclear bomb, whether it's a crude nuclear device, as you described, whether it's a nuclear warhead. We've had that discussion so far. But just to finish. So just understand the brilliance of Iranian nuclear deception, right? I think it's really interesting to get in the minds of the Ayatollah and understand this, because he doesn't want to provoke the United States. He doesn't want to see another Iraq-style invasion, this time of his country. He's building this capability on the enrichment side and on the reprocessing side. He is framing this as, I'm only building a civilian nuclear program. He's taken the weapons scientists who are building part of an active nuclear weapons program, and he's dispersing them, putting them under the guidance and direction of Fakhrizadeh, and starting to build out these capabilities. I mean, I admire, I have to say, I really admire the way he's played this three-dimensional nuclear chess game. It's very, very interesting. And I think he made a tragic mistake about 6 weeks ago when he rejected the offer from Trump at Oman and then provoked both an Israeli and then an American strike. But he was playing this game almost perfectly before then in building out these capabilities. And I think what he should have done, if I were him, I would have waited out Trump. I would have waited 3.5 years. I would have taken the offer in Oman, which gave him enrichment capability above ground. This consortium that was going to be built in 3.5 years would never be built. And even if it was built, you could just say, I'm not interested anymore, and challenge the next president, whoever that is, Republican or Democrat, to do anything about it. And I think the political calculation should have been, the next president's not going to do anything about this. I'll be able to complete my nuclear weapons program. But he challenged Trump. He thought Trump was a paper tiger. He rejected that offer at Oman. And we've seen what's happened over the past couple of weeks.
Two things. One, can you go and respond to certain things that you heard? And two, can we generally move in the direction of the modern day and trying to see what is the right thing now, our analysis of the situation now, we've been kind of staying in this in the context of history, which is really important, but sort of moving it forward. But yeah,
Sure.
go ahead, please.
I'm not sure how much time we have. I kind of hoped that we could
Unlimited.
talk about Israel's role in Iraq War II, and for that matter, in Barack Obama's dirty war in Syria that led to the rise of the bin Ladenites there. It's all part of America's Israel policy. So I don't want to, I'd rather go back before we go forward, but I also I need to go back over so many claims that he's made here that I'd like to address.
So I strongly prefer we go, because there's so much history, we're going to lose ourselves in it. There's not enough hours. We should take certain moments in history that instruct the modern day, but let's not get lost there if it's okay.
Sure.
This is such a fascinating conversation.
Although we
Iraq
talked
and
about, the
Iraq-
JCPOA and the time between then and now, like quite a bit already too. So
Yes.
we'll be going back over some of
Well,
that.
no, I mean modern day. I don't
You're
mean
talking
JC
this week.
I mean like this
Yeah,
week.
okay.
A lot of stuff happened this week, and a lot of stuff will happen tomorrow and the next week. And everyone wants to know, like, what is going to happen? What is the worst case? What is the best case? Should we be freaking out? What do we need to understand about today? That's all.
All right. So there's a lot of things to address here. So first of all, something that me and Mr. Dubowitz agree
Please call
about.
me Mark.
Mark. Something that Mark and I agree about is that there actually is not a threat of an aggressive first strike by Iran. I'm a little surprised to hear him say that, but I'm grateful to hear him say it. It is honest. I would, advise you you may be unfamiliar with this, but I can tell you, anyone in America who drives for a living and listens to AM radio have heard claims that Iran was making nuclear weapons probably 50,000 times in the last 25 years. Over and over and over again, we hear this propaganda. They still don't have a single atom bomb. The reason why they haven't been able to cobble together an atom bomb in this 1940s technology is because they have not tried to. Okay, so people can, just essentially flog this dead horse, pretend there's this threat. Oh, he's going to break out any day now. But here's the thing about that. As the Ayatollah well knows, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and now Trump again have all vowed with all sincerity that they would bomb Iran off the face of the earth if they attempted to break out and make a nuclear weapon. Hillary Clinton, when she ran, said they'd be obliterated from the face of the earth. Barack Obama did an interview with Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic in 2012 called As President, I Don't Bluff. And essentially the interview is him begging Jeffrey Goldberg to explain to the Israelis that he really, 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 really means it. That he's trying to negotiate, but if the Ayatollah breaks out for a nuke, I'll nuke him if I have to.
No, they never said that.
He didn't say that, but the implication was.
By the way, no U.S. president ever said they're going to obliterate Iran. U.S. president
Hillary
said
Clinton did.
all options are on the table.
Anyone can Google her word.
She was never our president.
No, I said she was running for president.
Yeah, but she was never our president. But no U.S. president ever said they'd obliterate Iran. Nobody ever said they'd drop a nuke on Iran.
The implication was clear under W. Bush, Barack Obama, Trump, Biden, and Trump again.
That they would strike Iran's nuclear facility.
If they broke out toward a nuclear weapon, America would do whatever it took to prevent that from happening. So
strike their nuclear facilities.
That was always the case there.
But please clarify, just to be accurate.
And I'm almost certain.
No one's talking about nuking Iran. No one's talking about bombing Iran to smithereens or obliterating or any of that.
I mean, that's really not true. I mean, Barack Obama changed America's nuclear posture to say, because it used to say we reserve the right to use a nuclear first strike against any country. And he changed that to say, no, we promise not to use a nuclear first strike against any non-nuclear weapon state except maybe Iran. Okay, that's true. All right. And so, in fact, that was the threat. And I got more here. Okay. Netanyahu also did an interview with Jeffrey Goldberg back when Ehud Barak was his defense minister I think this is also 2012. It might have been 2014, where the two of them explained that they agreed with what he said too, that the threat is not of a nuclear first strike. Unlike every AM radio audience has been led to believe that the Ayatollah, as soon as he gets an atom bomb, he will nuke Tel Aviv, and he doesn't care if all of Persia is nuked by Israel's 200 nukes in response. He's trying to cause the end of the world by causing a nuclear war and all these things. Well, Netanyahu himself admitted that that's not true.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I agree with
I'm
Scott,
just agreeing with you, so you don't have to stop me.
but I'm agreeing with you.
I know, but I'm agreeing with you, so it's all right. So Netanyahu told Jeffrey Goldberg that he was not concerned about a first strike, that his only concern was that talented young Israelis would move to Miami, that there would be a brain drain. That was his words, a brain drain from Israel. And that also then Hezbollah, as this is what he put it, and I agree with this, that conventional forces would have a bit more freedom of action in the region if Iran was sitting on an A-bomb. Neither of them said that there was a threat of an offensive first strike against Israel. And I would point out, and I'm skipping ahead to Trump, but I'm skipping back here again in a second because I got more things to refute. But Trump just said the other day when he announced American airstrikes there, that this has neutralized a threat to Israel. He did not even pretend that it was a threat to the United States that he had ended in doing so.
Actually, he said exactly that.
Well, actually, you can Google the statement.
He actually said, President Trump has said that an Iranian nuclear weapon is a threat to the United States.
Not
he said
in
that
a
over and over
statement
again.
where he
Wow.
announced his great victory in bombing,
He announced,
which is what I just said, right?
President
Okay,
Trump
thank
sends
you.
out
So
20
then-
truth posts a day. So let's look at the many,
so then
many,
you had
many
this whole
things
thing
that he
about
said.
how I always believe Hezbollah and I always believe the Ayatollah, when in fact I did not quote the Ayatollah and I did not quote Hezbollah on anything. I did quote Osama bin Laden taking responsibility for the Gopar Towers attack, which he shared that with Abdel Bari Atwan. Anyone can read it. And he agrees with Michael Scheuer, the former chief of the CIA's bin Laden unit, who also said that it was a hoax, that it was Iranian-backed Saudi Hezbollah that did that attack. And again, who did they attack? They killed 19 American airmen, which was the number one complaint of Al-Qaeda against the United States, that we had air forces and army stationed in Saudi Arabia in order to bomb and blockade Iraq, which again, and this was the thing that you had asked about before, was part of the dual containment policy in the 1990s.
So Scott, you're saying,
God damn,
no,
man.
wait a second.
All right.
The fact is, you're sitting here saying that, oh, I trust them all so much. Well, what do you think, Lex? What do you think Ronald Reagan meant by trust but verify? He meant don't trust, but be polite, right? That's what he meant. Verify means we know with sensors and cameras and inspections what's going on. No one can find a quote that I said here about how we can trust the Ayatollah because he promised this or that or the other thing. I didn't say that, right? What I'm talking about is the process. They sign agreements and then we have inspectors to verify their claims. And as anyone can search at IAEA.org, they have continued to verify the non-diversion of nuclear material in Iran to any military or other special
Actually,
purpose.
the IA has now said that they actually can no longer do this.
Because America withdrew from
before this war started. So, I mean, at the end of the day, let's just be factually accurate. And the fact of the matter is, anybody who knows anything about nuclear weapons program knows that we do not have 100% certainty on anything. I mean, Scott is making claims here that the Mossad is fabricating, the CIA is fabricating, everybody's fabricating. But he's also assuming that we have 100% certainty about what Iran is doing inside a country more than 2.5 times the size of Texas. As Scott rightly said, mountainous, incredibly difficult to monitor, incredibly difficult to surveil. They built underground facilities at Natanz and Fordo without our knowledge. They didn't disclose it. We finally found out about
already
it.
refuted that
Well,
an hour ago. Anyone
say
can
you refute
rewind
but
it.
the fact of the matter is they
Anyway.
did it. It's there. We
by
know
the way-
the facilities are there. But
And by the way, you keep saying that I just say lies, 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 but I have explained exactly what I meant. I've cited my sources and I haven't just sat here and said, that's a lie because I don't like it. I sat here and explained to you exactly how I know who was building those EFP bombs in Iraq, exactly how I know what the IAEA said about the state of inspections here or what Robert Kelly told the Christian Science Monitor about Parchin and the rest and on and on and on. You know, I sit here like I'm just saying, well, that's not true because I don't like it. When in fact, I'm explaining exactly why your claims are not true, which they're not. Just like saying that I said I trust Hezbollah when anyone can rewind that and break their finger trying to find the part where I said that because I never did. And now you brought up the DPRK. Well, in 2002, when George W. Bush said that they were part of the axis of evil, they were part of the NPT and they had a safeguards agreement with the IAEA. And yes, they had bought centrifuge equipment from AQ Khan, but they had not used it. It was John Bolton's lie that they were enriching uranium to weapons grade and violating the agreed framework. John Bolton and George W. Bush in the fall of 2002 then canceled the agreed framework deal that Bill Clinton had struck based on this misinformation. They added new sanctions and they launched what was called the Proliferation Security Initiative, which was an illegal and unilateral claim of the authority to seize any North Korean ship on the high seas if they suspected it of proliferation. And then they added them to the Nuclear Posture Review, putting them on the short list for a potential first strike. And it was only then in the end of 2002, after these, 4 or 5 major things that the Bush government did to antagonize them, that North Korea then announced that they were going to withdraw from the treaty and begin making nuclear weapons, which is what they did. And then, as we know from all the scientists say, every time that they've tested a nuclear bomb, it's been a plutonium bomb. They never tested, never once used a uranium bomb. There's no evidence that John Bolton's claims there that they were enriching uranium were ever true. And they had, Sig Hecker, who's this important American nuclear expert, went and toured their facilities and all of these things. And so we know quite a bit about what they have. And it was simply Bush pushed North Korea to nukes, as Gordon Prather wrote in his last great article for us at antiwar.com. And it was through this exact kind of belligerence when we already had a deal that we could have continued to work with them on.
This is the constant theme in your analysis. And again, I want to look at it, maybe steel man it, maybe challenge it. But the constant theme is the United States and Israel and the West. We constantly aggress against North Korea, against Iran, against Russia, against these countries, and they respond to us. And they respond to us in ways that they build nuclear weapons programs that are peaceful, but we force them to develop nuclear weapons. They don't actually mean to kill us.
Look, it's not right that I'm saying
Scott,
everything anyone does.
No,
look, you're saying that everything I say is that anyone else does is a reaction, but that's not true. The subject here is what has America done to make things worse rather than better.
That's
right?
not
I'm citing provocations. That doesn't mean I'm saying that everything that happens in the world is only an equal and opposite reaction to an American provocation. And you can't find me saying that. You can only somehow try to paraphrase me claiming that somehow or something like that. But that's what's at issue, right? Is, as I said, for example, there's the Reuters story that says that after Israel did the sabotage, which they bragged about at Natanz in April of 21, that was when they started enriching up to 60%. Okay, so now I'm saying that and I'm just denying the agency of the Iranians or anything, except that no, I'm not. I'm just citing the Reuters news agency saying that this proactive action by Israel caused a negative reaction by your own lights, a very negative reaction in their beginning to again enrich up to 60% uranium. So that means, I'm just spinning for the Ayatollah, or I believe that no one ever does anything except in reaction to Israel and America, except that I'm just citing specific examples of where that's exactly the case. Donald Trump withdrew from the deal. He could have stayed in the deal and tried hard to make it better. He didn't.
Well, he did try.
The U.S. government has made numerous mistakes.
If this
in
podcast
many of
is
these
all
countries.
about the American government and the mistakes it's made,
It's a huge
then we
part
can
of
spend
it.
4 hours on it.
Can we please
Get to today.
use everything we just talked about and talk about today? What is, maybe Mark, can you lay out what is the best case and the worst case, and Scott then lay out the best case and the worst case that can happen now?
So, Lex, I think the best case, and something I've advocated for, I've been working on this for 22 years, is that the Iranians return to negotiations at Oman, sit down with the United States, and conclude an agreement that peacefully and permanently and fully dismantles their nuclear program. They agree to that, which means they shut down any remaining facilities. They give up all the remaining centrifuges and enriched material that they could use to develop nuclear weapons. They let the IAEA in order to supervise this. They actually commit to not rebuilding this nuclear program. And we commit, as we've done with 23 other countries, to helping them provide civilian nuclear energy. Because it seems to me a little fanciful that Khamenei would build a civilian nuclear program under 80 meters of concrete surrounded by rock, and take all the risks he's taken. And by the way, he faces a risk to his regime. Spent $500 billion to do this, but it makes no commercial sense. But let's take him at his word that he wants civilian nuclear energy. Let's build it for him. As long as there's no enrichment or reprocessing that gives him the key capabilities that he could, if he decides to build nuclear weapons. That seems to me a thoughtful approach. I think Scott would probably agree with it. Proliferation proof. He can't build nuclear weapons. And we could do this all peacefully. That's my preference.
What can Trump do to help make that happen?
I think what he can do is he can say to the Iranians, look, I made you that offer last time. You rejected it. Now that offer is no longer on the table because that offer gave you enrichment. Now, temporarily, but I now see the game that you would have played when I left office to turn that enrichment and enrichment capability into nuclear weapons. So that deal's off the table. But here's the deal that's on the table. It's a one-page deal. You give up your nuclear capabilities. We help you build civilian nuclear energy. I think that's best case. All right. I think worst case is that the Iranians do what they've unfortunately been doing over and over again and rejecting these deals and holding firm that they want to retain this enrichment capability. And then the only reason they want to retain enrichment capability is the option to develop nuclear weapons. Otherwise, they can have civilian energy. Tomorrow makes much more commercial sense to do that. And the entire international community would help them and pay for that. I worry that they're going to just remain intransigent at the negotiating table. And I think if they do that, then what I worry that they're going to do is whatever remaining capabilities they have left, they'll bide their time. They'll wait for the opportunity. Maybe it's not now. Maybe it's when Trump's gone. And they will rebuild this nuclear weapons program. And they'll be then inviting further strikes, further war, and further suffering. And I worry that that is a worst case. And by the way, as part of that worst case in retaining the capabilities, the extra worst case is they take those capabilities and they go for a nuclear bomb. Now, if Scott's right, and the regime has never had any desire for a nuclear bomb, we don't have to worry about that. Because according to Scott, all of this has been fabricated. All of this has been result of U.S. and Israeli intelligence mendacity. And we don't have to worry about a nuclear weapon. I personally worry about it, knowing this regime, looking at 2.5 decades of nuclear deception. I worry that they want to retain those capabilities. And at a time of their choosing, develop a nuclear bomb. So I think if you're responsible and you're trying to think through the various scenarios, you've got to consider an Iranian nuclear weapons breakout as a possibility, and you've got to try to mitigate that. You can either mitigate that at the negotiating table through a full dismantlement deal, or, and that's not, it's the least, well, it's the least good option, for sure, is you're going to have to go back in there, either the Israelis and or the United States, and you're going to have to continue to use both covert action and air power to destroy those capabilities.
Can I just even dig in further on the worst case? Do you think it's possible to have where U.S. gets pulled into a feet on the ground, full-on war with Iran?
I think one must never dismiss possibilities because, as I said, you've got to plan against worst case options. And I think
That's what the Israel lobby has in store for you guys.